We did to and instead commands. To put the command into affirmative, all you need to do is put the verb in the el, ella, and usted form. Some examples are, if the question was play the game, you would put jugar in the el, ella, usted form, and you have juega el partido. Another example might say eat the food, where again you would put comer in the right form and have come la comida. The last example could be run the race, and you would get corre la carrera because correr in the la usted form is corre. To put the command in the to negative form, first you need to take the yo form of the verb. Once you have the yo form, cut off the o and add es if it is an AR verb and as if it is an ER verb. Some examples are, if the question was don't play the game, you would take jugar and put it in the yo form, which is juego, then eliminate the o and add es. Your final answer would be no juegues el partido. Another example might be don't eat the food. Again, you need to put comer in the yo form, which is como, and eliminate the o and add as. Your final answer is no comas la comida. A final example would be don't run the race, where the answer is no corras la carrera. There are 9 irregular forms of affirmative to commands. You will need to memorize them. We have di, se, ve, pon, ten, ven, as, sal, and val. These irregular verbs are only used in the affirmative form of to commands. For example, when saying do your homework, the verb to do is hacer, therefore as is used, and your answer is haz tu tarea. When saying set the table, the verb for to set is poner, therefore pon is used, and your final answer is pon la mesa. And the last example is say my name, and the verb to say is decir, therefore di is used, and your final answer is di mi nombre. There are 5 forms of irregular negative to commands. Dar changes to no des, estar changes to no estés, irse changes to vayas or no te vayas, ser changes to no seas, and saber changes to no sepas. Be careful. Dar, estar, and saber are irregular in the negative form, but not in the positive form.
Now let's practice the two commands here with some questions. Number 1. Hacer la cama. The answer here would be has because hacer is irregular in the to positive form. Number 2. Comer las frutas ahora. This one would be come because you take comer and then put it in the el, ella, usted form for two positive commands. Number 3. No blank a la clase de español hoy. This one is vayas because ir is irregular in the negative to commands. Number 4. Rafael blank them. This one is tomalas because you have to put tomar in the el, ella, usted form and then connect the direct object pronoun, which is las, which also makes us need an accent over the o. Number 5. Ricardo no blank mi casa. It's destruyas because you have to put destruir in the yo form minus the o and then put as on the end because it's an IR verb. Number 6. Jorge blank una buena salud. This one is Montaigne because Montaigne is irregular in the positive to command. Don't forget the accent over the E. Number 7. Ricardo blank la mesa ahora. This one is pon because poner is also irregular verb in the positive to commands. Number 8. Rafael no blank el refresco. This one is bebas because in the negative to commands you need to put beber in the yo form, get rid of the o, and put as on the end because it's an ER verb. Number 9. Me blank la verdad. It is D because decir is irregular in the two positive commands. And number 10. Nacho no blank temprano de tus clases. This one is salgas because the yo form of salir is salgo, and then you put as on the end because it's another IR verb.
Forming the affirmative usted ustedes commands. To form the affirmative usted command, use the yo form of the verb and replace the o at the end with the opposite ending. For AR verbs, add an e to the end, and for ER verbs, add an a to the end. To form affirmative ustedes commands, use the yo form of the verb and replace the o at the end with the opposite ending. For AR verbs, add an en to the end, and for ER verbs, add an an to the end. For both affirmative usted and affirmative ustedes, Make sure to attach any direct or indirect objects to the end of the verb and attach with the appropriate accents. Forming the negative usted commands. To form the negative usted command, use the yo form of the verb and replace the yo at the end with the opposite ending. For AR verbs, add an E to the end, and for ER verbs, add an A to the end. To form the negative usted command, use the yo form of the verb and replace the yo at the end with the opposite ending. For AR verbs, add an EN to the end, and for ER verbs, add an AN to the end. Although these are similar to the affirmative forms, make sure that, unlike the affirmative forms, you put any direct or indirect objects in front of the verb. And that's all you need to know to form the affirmative and negative usted commands.
There are 5 main irregular usted verbs that can be remembered with the acronym DISHES. DAR changes to day in the usted form and den in ustedes. Ir goes to vaya and vayan. The first S is ser, which becomes sea or sean. H is for haber, although we don't use it with usted commands. A star changes to este and esten, and the final S stands for saber, which goes to sepa and sepan. There are also many groups of verbs that will have similar irregular forms. Car verbs will change C to QU, such as in toque. Gar adds a U after the G, like in page, and zar switches Z to C, like in MPAC. Ser and seer verbs with a vowel before the ending add a Z before the C, like in obedezca and traduska. With a consonant before the end, it transitions Z to C, like in venza. Here and here verbs switch G's for J's, for example, in recoja and exija. Go verbs and gear verbs that change to go to make forms like triga, salga, and siga. Finally, uir verbs change to a Y, forming commands like contribuya.
Mixed practice for 2 ustedes commands. Ejemplo 1. Julio, get up. We see the subject is Julio, so we know to use the affirmative to command. Next, we know that the word meaning to get up is levantarse. We must now make it reflexive, which in this case needs te, making the translation Julio, te levanta. Ejemplo 2. Señores, collect the tests. Because the subject is señores, we will use the positive ustedes form of the command. The verb meaning to collect is recoger. We must finally add the direct complement, which is replacing the test with only los. The entire translation is señores recojan los. Ejemplo 3. Señora, don't steal it, la computadora. We see that the subject is señora, so we will use the negative usted form of the command. The verb meaning to steal is robar, and we must now add the direct complement, which is replacing the computer with only la. The final translation should be señora no la robe. Ejemplo 4. Maria, start your homework. We see the subject is Maria, so we must use the affirmative to command. The verb we will use, meaning to start, is empezar. We must now add the direct complement, which is replacing your homework with only la, making the translation Maria empieza la. Ejemplo 5. Profe, return the papers. We see the subject is profe, so we will use the affirmative usted form. The word meaning to return is devolver, and we must now add the direct complement, which is replacing the papers with only los. The final answer should be profe devuelva los. Ejemplo 6. Students, practice your verbs. The subject of this command is the student, so we will use the affirmative ustedes form as shown. The verb meaning to practice is practicar. Now we must add the direct complement, replacing your verbs with los. The answer will be estudiantes practiquen los. Ejemplo 7. Mamá y papá, listen to me. We see we must use the affirmative ustedes form of the command because mamá y papá are being spoken to. The word meaning to listen is escuchar. And finally, we must add the complement because the command demands mamá y papá to listen to me, so we must use me before the command. The final command will be mamá y papá me escuchan. El último ejemplo, Pablo, don't bring the food. Because Pablo is being spoken to, we know we would use the familiar negative to form of the command. Next, we know that the word meaning to bring is traer. And we must now add the direct complement, which is replacing the food with only la.
The answer is Pablo no la traigas.
Go. Now we move on to the sorpresa. For the two mandatos, the first question is Luisa, wash las manos. The second is Eduardo, give me el coche tuyo. The third is Pablo, don't laugh at me cuando tengo problemas. Guadalupe, play la guitarra. Jorge, don't play el partido. And for the usted commands, Senor Rodriguez, return to me mi bicicleta. Profe, por favor, don't bother me. Bisabuelo, keep el equilibrio. Senora Cervantes, don't fall asleep. And Ray, forgive me por mi error. Here are the answers. The first is lávate, dame, no me rías, toca, no juegues. For the usted mandatos, vuélvamela, no me moleste, montenga, no se duerma, and perdóneme. ¿Por qué? For the first one, it is an AR verb and it's reflexive, so you add the te and the accent to keep the stress. For the second, it's an AR verb, so you switch, and it's give me, so you add the me at the end. For the third, it's an ER switch to AR, and it's a negative, so you add the no and the s at the end. At me, so you add the me at the end, and there are no accents. For the AR, it's just regular toca. For number 5, AR switch to ER, and it's negative, so you add the no and the s at the end. Number 5 is an AR switch to an ER. It's negative, so you add the no, and you add an s at the end, and the u for pronunciation. For the usted mandatos, first is an ER switch to AR. It's to me, so you add the me at the end. The bike is the object, and it's feminine, so you add the la. There's a stem change, and the accent is over the e. The next is an AR switch to ER. You add the me because it's negative, add no. The third is an AR switch to an AR. The O form is montengo, so you take off the O and add an A. The fourth is an IR switch to an AR. The O form is duermo, you take off the O, add the A. The reflexive, so you add the se, and it's negative, so there's a no. Number 5 is an AR switch to ER. You add the me, and there's an accent over O.